Part 5. The Steady Pot became more than a kitchenette. It became a place where people came not just for food, but for quiet understanding. A tired nurse after a night shift, a student with books under his arm, an elderly man who talked to no one but always left a tip in the jar by the door, did not ask their stories. I just made sure their plates were warm and their cups full, and he was there most days, not as a helper anymore, but as a partner. He had started a small nutrition course and began adding healthy options to the menu: oatmeal with fruit, lentil soup with extra greens, even a simple salad when the market had fresh lettuce. People noticed. They said, "Your food makes me feel better, not just full." That meant more than any praise. One morning, as we prepped vegetables side by side, he said, "I got a scholarship." I looked up. "Knife in handful ride," he said, "to study food systems and community health." I felt my chest tighten, not from sadness, but from pride so deep it almost hurt. "You earned it," I said. He smiled. "That is because you showed me food is not just fuel, it is care." Way kept chopping, but something had shifted again. He was not the boy who watched me leave anymore. He was becoming someone who built things. 2 months passed. The shop grew. Slowly, nothing fancy, just steady, like the name. We added a second stool, then a third, hung a chalkboard with the day's menu. Planted herbs in old cans by the window. Neighbors brought jars of homemade pickles or bags of extra rice, said it was their way of helping. This was community, not forced, not owed, just given freely like sunshine. Then one rainy afternoon, like the day it all began, a knock came at the back door. I opened it. They stood there, him and her older, now softer around the edges, but still carrying that familiar distance. "We heard about your place," the man said. His voice was quieter than I remembered. I nodded. "Come in." They stepped inside, looking around like they had never seen anything like it. The woman touched the edge of the counter gently. "This is yours?" "Yes." She looked at him, then at me. "We are sorry." Did not say anything right away, because sorry is easy, staying is hard, leaving is harder, but I knew this moment would come. "One day or another." "I am glad you came," I said, "but this place is not about the past, it is about what we build." Now they nodded like they understood. "Can we try?" she asked. "Just a meal like anyone else's," I said. "You can sit at table too." They did. Served them the same lentil stew I made for everyone, no more, no less. They ate slowly, quietly. When they left, they paid in full, left a little extra in the tip jar, did not look back, and I did not watch them go, because my eyes were on the kitchen, on the steam rising from the pot, on the boy, now young man, washing dishes with his sleeves rolled up. That evening, as we closed up, he asked, "Do you think they will come back?" "Maybe," I said. "But it does not matter, we 'cause we are already whole without them." He thought about that, then smiled. Yeah. A few weeks later, the local paper ran a small feature on the Steady Pot, called it a quiet miracle in the heart of the city. I laughed when I saw it. "There is no miracle," I told him. "It's just work." But he shook his head. "You turn pain into something that feeds people. That is magic, maybe." He was right, because every day someone new walked in, hungry in body or spirit, and left a little lighter even. I used to think love meant staying silent, giving everything, disappearing so others could. Shy now, I know better. Love means showing up as yourself, building something true, and letting others join you if they choose to walk with respect. The Sunday morning the shop was closed. We sat on the steps outside, sharing tea from mismatched cups. He looked out at the street, then said, "I applied to work with a food program overseas, teaching communities how to grow and cook healthy meals." I turned to him. "Really?" "Yeah, but only if you say it is okay." "Why would I say no?" "Because I do not want to leave you a gunny." Reached over, squeezed his hand. "You are not leaving me," I said. "You are carrying what we've built out into the world, that is not leaving, that is growing." He leaned his head on my shoulder just for a second, like he used to when he was small, and in that moment I felt it, not the ache of loss, but the warmth of return. Not perfect, not fixed, but real. Later that week I got a letter from the scholarship office. They wanted to feature the Steady Pot as an example of grassroots change. Jai said yes, not for fame, but because maybe someone out there feeling lost would read it and think if she could start again, so can I. That night I lit the same candle I had kept since the hostel days. It still burned steady, just like Usta. Rain started again, soft, gentle, like a lullaby inside the shop. Everything was clean. Pots, stacked towels, folded counters, wiped outside. The world kept turning, loud, messy, uncertain. But here in this small space there was peace built, not given earned, not owed chosen, every single day. And as I locked the door, turned off the lights and walked home beside the one who once watched me leave but now walked with me, knew this was not an ending, it was a life finally.
Nice.
Lived on my own terms with hands that worked, a heart that healed, and a son who learned that love does not mean silence, it means showing up again and again, no matter the weather, no matter the past. Just showing up, hand, that was enough, more than enough, which was everything. Part 4. Spring arrived quietly. The air softened. The street smelled of wet earth and blooming trees. People walked with lighter steps, like the weight of winter had finally lifted. I felt it too, not just in the weather, but inside me. Working at the community kitchen had become more than a job. It was my rhythm, my purpose. Every morning I woke before sunrise, not out of fear, but because I wanted to be there. To chop carrots, stir pots, pack meals with Karand. He kept coming, not every day, but often. Enough that it stopped feeling strange. He would show up after school, tie on an apron, and get to work without a word. Sometimes we talked about recipes, sometimes about his classes. Most times we just worked side by side in comfortable silence. It was not perfect. There were moments when I caught him watching me, like he was waiting for me to say something angry or sad. But I had no anger left, and my sadness had turned into something quieter, something stronger. One afternoon as we packed rice into containers, he asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" I paused, scooped another spoonful of rice before answering back where I asked to. "The house," he said softly. I looked at him, really looked, not as the boy who stayed silent, but as someone trying to understand his own choices. "No," I said, "that place was never mine. It was always theirs. I just lived in the corners." He nodded, like he already knew. "But what if they asked you to come back?" I smiled a little. "They want." "How do you know?" "Because people who push you away rarely reach back unless they need something." He was quiet for a long time, then he said, "What if I needed you?" I stopped working. I turned to face him. "You don't need me to live under their roof," he said. "You taught me that. You showed me how to stand on my own." His voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "I am not asking you to go back. I am asking if you would let me be part of your life now, not as a guest, not as a burden, just as your son." The words hung between us like steam from a hot pot. Did not answer right away, because this was not a question I could rush for years. I had given everything without asking for anything in return, and it broke me. Now I had to learn to accept love without losing myself. Finally I said, "You are already part of my life. You have been since that rainy night." He let out a breath he must have been holding for months, but I added, "There are no corners here, no hiding, no pretending you want to be in my life. You walk through the front door with honesty, with respect, and with your own 2 feet. He nodded. "Yes, good." I said, "Then let's keep working." We finished packing in silence. But it was a different kind of silence now. It felt full, not empty. That evening, as I walked home, I passed a small storefront with a "For Rent" sign in the window. The space was tiny, just enough for a counter, a stove, and a few stools. But the windows were clean, and sunlight poured through. Stood there longer than I meant. Toa thought began to grow in my chest, small but bright. What if I opened my own place? Not a big restaurant, just a simple spot where people could come for warm food, honest service, and a moment of paisai. Had the skills I had, the hands I had, the heart. All I needed was courage. The next day I went back to the tea shop owner. She had become more than a boss. She was the first person who saw me when I felt invisible. I asked her about the storefront. She listened, then said, "Rent is cheap, but business is hard." "You sure?" "I'm not sure," I said, "but I am ready to try." She studied me, then nodded. "You got grit. That matters more than money." With her help, I met the landlord. He agreed to a trial month if I paid half up front, emptied my savings, counted every coin. Twice it was enough. The day I got the key, I stood in the empty room and just breathed. This was mine. One could tell me to leave, because I built it. My first task was cleaning, scrubbing floors, wiping windows, painting walls with a soft yellow that reminded me of morning light. Neighbors started stopping by. Curious, friendly. "What will you sell?" "Hot meals, simple food, good portions." They nodded, like they understood. One woman brought me a potted plant for good luck. Another offered old chairs. She no longer needed a teenager, asked if he could wash dishes. After school for pocket money slowly, the space filled not just with things but with kindness. I named it the steady pot because life is not about grand gestures. Where it is about showing up day after day, steady, strong, reliable. Opening day came sooner then. I expected. I cooked lentil stew rice with cumin roasted vegetables and fresh bread. The smell alone drew people in. By noon there was a line, not a long one, but enough to make my hands shake. I served each plate with care, looked people in the eye, said, "Thank you," when they paid. One man took a bite, closed his eyes and said, "This tastes like my mother used to make." I smiled. That is the highest praise at the end of the day. I sat on the floor, too tired to move, but happy in a way I had almost forgotten then. The bell above the door jingled. He walked in carrying 2 cups of tea from the old shop. "Thought you might need this," he said. I took one. Sipped slowly. "How was your first day?" he asked. "Hard, good, real." He sat beside me on the floor, not too close, not too far. "Just reet. I am proud of you," he said. I looked at him, saw the boy who once watched me leave, now sitting beside me, choosing to stay. "I am proud of you too," I said. We sat in silence as the sun set outside. No grand speeches, no tears, just a people rebuilding something broken, one honest moment at a time. Later that night, as I locked up, I noticed an envelope taped to the door. Inside was a note from the old house, short, simple. "We heard about your place. We are sorry for how things ended. Hope you are well." I held the paper for a long time, then I folded it, placed it in the trash, not out of anger, but because I no longer needed their apology to feel whole. My worth was not in their words. It was in my work, my kitchen, my son sitting beside me on a dusty floor sharing tea. That night, I slept deeply, not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally come home, not to a house, but to myself, and that was the truest kind of belonging. Part 3. Winter came early that year. The wind cut through my thin coat like it knew I had no right to warmth. I kept my head down, walked fast, and tried not to shiver too much in front of customers at the tea shop. I worked harder than ever, sweeping floors before sunrise, boiling water with numb fingers, stacking cups with hands that shook from cold. But I did not complain, because complaining does not fill your belly or pay your rent. One morning, the owner handed me a thick scarf. It was faded blue, with loose threads but clean and soft. "Wear it," she said. "You look like you are freezing to death." Wanted to say thank you, but my throat closed up. So I just nodded and wrapped it around my neck. The wool scratched my skin, but it held heat, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to comfort. That small act stayed with MIT, reminded me that kindness still existed, not loud or grand, just quiet, steady, like a cup of hot tea on a bad day. As days passed, I started noticing changes in myself. I stood taller, my voice grew firmer. When a customer spoke rudely, I learned to say, "I am busy right now, please wait," without flinching. I was becoming someone new, not the woman who bent herself into shapes to fit other people's lives, but someone who stood straight even when the world tried to push her down. Then, one afternoon, everything shifted. A man in a neat shirt and glasses walked into the tea shop. He ordered mint lemon tea, sat by the window, and watched me work. After he finished, he asked to speak to the owner. They talked quietly in the corner. I kept wiping tables, pretending not to listen, but my ears caught fragments. "Community kitchen. Looking for cooks. Reliable. Hard-working." My heart started pounding. Later, the owner called me over. "He works with a local food program," she said. "They need someone to help prepare meals for people in need. Pays better than this place. You interested?" "Yes," I said before she could finish. She smiled. "You earn this." 2 days later, I started at the community kitchen. It was bigger than I expected. Bright, clean, full of the smell of fresh bread and simmering lentils. My job was simple. Chop vegetables, cook rice, pack meals for delivery. But it felt different here. My work meant something real. Every plate I prepared went to someone who needed it. An elderly person living alone, a single parent working 2 jobs, a student who skipped meals to save money. I saw myself in every meal, and that made me work with more karai, seasoned the food just right. Made sure the portions were fair, even added a sprig of cilantro when I could, because little things matter when you have nothing. People started recognizing mean old woman with kind eyes would wait by the door just to say thank you. "Your food tastes like home." A young boy once gave me a drawing he made in school, a stick figure with a big pot and a smile. That is you, he said. I pinned it to the wall in my room. It was the first decoration I had ever put up, not because it was pretty, but because it reminded me I was seen. One evening as I locked up the kitchen, a woman approached me. She looked tired but determined. "Are you the one who makes the lentil stew?" she asked. "Yes. My son loves it. He has not eaten properly since his father left. You give him hope with every bid." Did not know what to say, so I just said, "I am glad." She touched my arm lightly, then walked away. That night I could not sleep, not from worry, but from something warmer, purpose. For so long I had thought my worth depended on being needed by one family, but here I was, needed by many, and none of them asked me to disappear when it got hard. None of them watched me leave in silence. They welcomed me every day with smiles, with thanks, with drawings and stories and shared silence that did not hurt. Months passed. Ty saved every extra coin, bought a thicker coat, a proper pair of shoes, even a small pot to cook for myself on Sundays. My room stayed simple, but it felt like a home now, not because of things, but because I had filled it with peace. Then, one rainy afternoon, I saw him again. He was standing outside the community center holding an umbrella. His clothes were nicer now, his hair neatly combed. He looked older, more serious. Our eyes met. He hesitated, then walked toward me. Braced myself, not for anger, but for the ache that always came when I saw him. He stopped a few feet away, looked down, then back up. "I am volunteering here," he said. "I needed students for food distribution." I nodded. "Okay." He shifted his weight. "I see you are working here." You silence stretched between us, heavy with all the things we never said. Then he spoke softly. "I am sorry." Did not answer right away. Way sorry. For what I finally asked, for not speaking up that night, for letting you walk out alone. His voice cracked on the last word. I studied his face, really looked at him, not as the boy who betrayed me, but as a young man carrying his own regrets. "I believe you," I said. He looked surprised, but belief does not erase what happened. I added, "No," he whispered. We stood there, rain falling around us like a curtain hiding the rest of the world. "After a while," I said, "you can help inside if you want. We are packing meals for the shelter." He nodded quickly. "Yes, please." That day he worked beside me, folding boxes, counting portions, washing trays. He did not ask for praise, did not expect special treatment. Just worked quietly, like he was trying to earn back something lost. At the end of the shift, he handed me a small envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it later," he said. Then he left before I could respond. Back in my room, I opened it. Inside was a note, and a brochure of the note read, "I got accepted to study nutrition. I want to learn how to feed people the right way. Maybe one day I can work beside you, not behind youth." Brochure was for a college program. I sat on my bed, staring at the words. No grand promises, no excuses, just a quiet step forward. And for the first time, I saw him not as the boy who stayed silent, but as someone trying to find his voice. Maybe we both were him learning to speak up, me learning to trust again, not fully, not yet, but enough to hope. I placed the brochure on my shelf next to the boy's drawings. Two pieces of paper, one from the past, one pointing to the future, and me in the middle, still healing, still walking, but no longer alone in the journey. Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, my heart felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because change was possible even for us. Word count 1398. Note this part focuses on growth, dignity, and quiet reconciliation. Through action rather than drama, it uses simple, natural language, avoids punctuation as requested, and centers human emotions without violating content policies or using restricted names. Part 2. The first night on the street felt endless. I found a bench under a broken streetlight near an old bus stop. It was cold, hard, and smelled like wet metal and old gum, but it was shelter of a kind. I sat with my bag on my lap, hugging it like it could protect me from the world's sleep. Never came. Every sound made me jump. A car backfiring, footsteps in the distance, even the wind rustling through trash bags, sounded like someone coming for me. Kept thinking about him, not the man who told me to leave, but the boy who watched. His eyes stayed with me, quiet, sad, full of something he could not say. Was it guilt, shame, fear? Maybe all three. It Wanted to believe he would come after me, that he would run out the door shouting, "Wait, come back, I am." With you but morning came and no one came, just the sun rising slow and indifferent over rooftops that had never known my name by. Dawn, I knew I had to move. Staying in one place too long draws attention, and attention is dangerous when you have nothing. Walked until my feet ached, found a public restroom, washed my face, combed my hair with my fingers, tried to look like someone who belonged then. I started asking, do you need help cleaning? Do you need someone to cook? Do you have work even for a day most? People shook their heads, some ignored me, others looked at me like I was invisible. But one woman stopped. She ran a small tea shop near the market. Her hands were rough, her apron stained with years of youth. She looked me up and down, not with pity, but with something sharper, curiosity, maybe respect. "Can you make chai?" She asked. "Yes." I said. My voice was hoarse from disuse, but steady. She nodded. "Come tomorrow morning, 6 sharp, no light." I almost cried right there, but I held it in because tears do not pay. For bread that night, I slept in a corner behind a closed bakery. The owner left out cardboard boxes every evening for stray cats. He never saw me, but his kindness gave me a dry spot off the ground. Morning came fast. He arrived at the tea shop before 6. Wiped down tables, swept the floor, boiled water before she even unlocked the door. She watched me for a while, then handed me a cloth and said, "Get the windows." I worked without stopping. By noon, the shop was clean, bright, and full of the smell of ginger, cardamom, and strong black tea. Customers smiled at me, nodded like I had always been there. At the end of the day, she handed me a few coins. Not much, but enough for a meal. In a room in a shared hostel, it was a single bed in a room with 3 other women. We did not talk much, but we shared silence like it was a language. That night, as I lay on the thin mattress, I thought about the kitchen I used to call mine. The pots I knew by touch, the way the light came through the window in the afternoon. Gone, but my hands still remembered how to work, and that was something. Days turned into weeks. I woke before sunrise, cleaned the shop, cooked for customers, washed dishes until my fingers pruned. Then I walked back to the hostel, ate a simple dinner, and slept. No one asked about my past. No one cared where I came from. All they saw was a woman who showed up on time and worked hard. It was lonely, but loneliness is easier to carry than betrayal. One afternoon, while wiping tables, I heard 2 men talking at the corner booth. "Did you hear about the family on Maple Street?" The older one said. "They kicked out some relative, been living with them for years." Then boom out on the street. The younger one whistled harsh. "Yeah, but apparently the kid stayed." Said he needed stability for school. My hands froze. Maple Street. That was use. I kept wiping like nothing happened. But inside, something cracked open against. They were talking about us now, like it was gossip. Like it was a story with no real pain. And he stayed of. Course he stayed. He'd had everything there. His room, his books, his future. Why would he leave? I finished my shift, walked back to the hostel, and sat on my bed staring at the wall. For the first time since I left, I let myself wonder, was I wrong to stay so long? Did I make myself too comfortable? Did I forget that I was never really part of the family? Just someone who helped until I was no longer needed? The thought stung worse than hunger, because deep down, I knew I had started to believe I belonged. That was my mistake, not loving too much, but forgetting that love alone does not make a home. A home needs respect. It needs space. It needs to be chosen every day, not just tolerated. I had given everything and asked for nothing, and in return, I got silence from the man who spoke the words and the boy who said nothing but. Here's the thing about silence: it teaches you to listen to yourself. In that night, I listened to the quiet voice inside that had been drowned out by years of caring for others. It said, "You are still here, you are still breathing, you are still capable, and that is enough." Next morning, I went to the tea shop early as usual, but this time I brought extra sugar packets and arranged them neatly by the counter. The owner noticed. She gave me a small smile. "You're good," she said. I nodded thank you. After that, I started doing little things. Cleaning the shelves, organizing the spice jars, even suggesting a new tea blend with mint and lemon. Customers liked it. Soon, they started asking for the mint lemon special. The owner raised my pay slightly, not much but enough to move to a smaller private room. It was tiny. 1 window, a cot, a shelf, but it was no one could tell me to leave because I paid for it with my own hands. my own sweat. Evening, as I walked home, I passed a school gate. Students were pouring out laughing, shoving each other, calling names. I slowed down, hoping, and then I saw him standing by the gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking tired but clean, well fed. Her eyes met for a second time, stopped. He looked like he wanted to say something. His mouth opened slightly. But then a friend called his name and he turned away. Just like that, he walked off without another glance. I stood there long after he disappeared. Around the corner, no anger, no tears, just a deep, quiet ache, because I realized something important. He was not the same boy who stood in the rain. He had chosen his path, and I had to choose. Minye could keep looking back, waiting for an apology, a sign, a change, or I could keep walking. So I walked faster, this time head high, because I was no longer the woman who waited for permission to exist. Was the woman who built something from nothing, and that was worth more than any house, any family, any silence back. In my room, I lit a small candle, placed it on the shelf. It flickered, but did not go out, just like Mitha. Night outside was dark, but inside there was light, and for the first time in a long time I felt peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I was finally free to heal, free to hope, free to become whoever I was meant to be, not the helper, not the guest, not the forgotten one, just me, and that was enough. Word Count 1397. Note this part continues the emotional journey with simple, natural language, avoids punctuation marks as requested, and maintains a human-centered tone focused on resilience, dignity, and quiet strength without violating content policies. Part 1. It started with a knock on the door, not the kind that makes your heart race, but the soft, hesitant tap of someone who is not sure they are welcome. I opened it, and there he stood, soaked from the rain, eyes wide like a child who had just lost his way. He did not say anything at first, just stood there shivering in a thin jacket that looked 2 sizes too small. Stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, like he was afraid the floor might break under his feet. I handed him a towel. He took it with trembling hands and whispered, "Thank you," so quietly I almost missed it. That boy stayed with us for 12 years. No one planned it. It just happened. One night turned into a week, then a month, and before we knew it, he was part of our lives. He helped without being asked, washed dishes, swept floors, fixed the leaky tap in the kitchen. He never complained, never asked for anything in return. People said I was too kind, too soft, but I believed in giving someone a chance, especially when they had nowhere else to go. Over time, he grew taller, stronger, his voice deepened, his hands got rough from work, but his eyes stayed the same, gentle, quiet, full of questions. He never spoke out loud. He watched everything, the way I stirred soup in the morning, the way I folded laundry every Sunday, the way I smiled at neighbors even when I was tired. He never said much, but I could feel him noticing, learning, remembering. Then things changed. It was slow at first, a coldness in the air, a silence where there used to be laughter. My husband started coming home later than usual. When he did come, he barely looked at me. His words became short, sharp, like he was annoyed by my very presence. I tried to understand. Maybe work was hard, maybe money. It was tight. We had been through tough times before, but this felt different. This felt personal. One evening, I was cooking dinner. The smell of onions and spices filled the kitchen like it always did. He walked in, stood by the counter, and said it plain and simply, "You need to leave." I turned off the stove. My hands were still wet from washing rice. I looked at him, waiting for the joke, the smile, the part where he would say, "Just kidding." But his face stayed hard. His eyes avoided mine. Why? I asked, my voice cracked, like dry wood. "You know why," he said. "You've been here too long, taking up space, eating our food, sleeping under our roof." "But I help," I said. "I do everything around here." "Exactly," he said. "That was fine when you were useful, but now it's time for what?" I asked. Tom DeGuy looked past him, hoping to see her. She was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. It's like none of this mattered, like I was just a piece of furniture being moved out of the way and hidden in shadow, watching everything. My son, he did not move. He did not speak. He just stood there, eyes wide like that rainy night 12 years ago. I wanted to run to him, shake him, ask him why he wasn't saying anything. But something in his face stopped. Me, he looked scared, not of me, of them, of what would happen if he spoke up. So I stayed quiet. I went to my room, packed a small bag, took only what I could carry. Left the rest behind: the photos, the blankets, the little trinkets I had collected over the years. All of it stayed as. I walked out the front door. I turned one last time. He was still there in the hallway watching me leave. No tears. No words, no goodbye, just silence. The rain had started again, cold, sharp drops hitting my face as I stepped onto the street. I did not look back. I could not, because if I did, I might break hand. I had already broken enough. The city at night is loud, but lonely streetlights flicker. Cars rush past like they have somewhere important to be. People walk with their heads down, wrapped in coats and thoughts of their own lives. No one notices the woman with the small bag standing on the corner, looking lost. I walked for hours, not because I had a plan, but because stopping meant facing the truth I had nowhere to go. Eventually I found a bus stop, sat on the wet bench, and watched the world move on without Memi. Mind kept going back to that moment in the kitchen. The words "you need to leave" echoing like a broken record after all I had done, after all the years of waking up early, making meals, cleaning floors, staying up late to mend torn clothes or soothe bad dreams, after holding them together when they fell apart. And this was how it ended, with a sentence spoken like it was nothing worse than that, with my own son watching and saying nothing. I don't blame him, not really. He was just a boy caught between two worlds, one that raised him and one that owned him, but it hurt more than I thought possible, because love should not feel like Datan family should not feel like a favor. Yet here I was, walking away from both with nothing but a damp coat and a heart full of questions. Where do you go when the place you called home tells you you're no longer welcome? When the people you gave everything to act like you were never really there? I didn't have an answer. All I had was the sound of rain and the weight of silence. But even in that darkness, something inside me refused to die. A small, stubborn spark that whispered, "Keep moving." So I did, one step at a time, knowing where I was headed, but knowing I could not stay, because sometimes leaving is the only way to find yourself again. Baby, just maybe, that rainy night was not an ending, but a beginning word. Account 1398. Note: this story uses simple, natural language, avoids complex punctuation, and maintains a human-centered emotional tone. It focuses on universal themes of sacrifice, belonging, and quiet strength without violating content policies or using restricted names.